right, I'm here with Mike Jolly. Really great to have you. And this is a big deal for me because we're here at the Iron Neck Studios. You've flown in specifically for some events and things like that are going on. Appreciate you taking the time, Mike.
Bart, I'm excited because I've seen you for 2 years now, working with Iron Neck and doing all the videos and all the good stuff you're doing on the training, and I finally get to meet you in person. So
yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Good deal, man. This is exciting. And, it's funny. It's like I joke that I'm the middle-aged Iron Neck guy. That's like, that relates to the, because I only get text messages from my old friends that are like on Instagram and they're 48, 49, and they're like, man, I mentioned my neck pain, and all of a sudden you're showing up. I'm like,
well,
perfect.
At least you're not the old Iron Neck guy.
Right. So, but okay, so Mike, we're going to go all over the place here. You've got a fascinating backstory and how you came upon the idea of Iron Neck. But let's talk about just the impact of Iron Neck. From what I know, you really started Iron Neck to help people in football, playing sports, prevent concussions. Talk about just the creation of Iron Neck, what were you trying to, what community you were trying to serve and how that happened?
So I created Iron Neck to prevent CTE. And chronic traumatic encephalopathy obviously is a terrible, brain disease that you can get, and it can destroy a life. It has destroyed many lives. It destroyed lives of teammates that I played with at UCLA. So when I started investigating what causes CTE, it was concussions. All the neurosurgeons told me right away, it's concussions. If we can prevent concussions, we'll prevent CTE. So my next question to them was, well, how do you prevent concussions? And they're like, we're not really sure. But one neurosurgeon, Dr. Robert Cantu from Boston, he was very sure. And him and Ann McKee both were in the movie Concussion with Will Smith. They were some of the neurosurgeons that were mentioned in that movie. They were convinced that neck strength prevented concussions, and they'd already started a 3.5-year study in Colorado of 3,500 plus high school students, and girls and guys, and every kind of sport. And after the 3.5 years was over, Robert Cantu told me, I guarantee you, we will prove that neck strength can help prevent concussions. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. Logically, that made sense to me because I wrestled at UCLA as well as I played football. This was before Title IX killed the wrestling team there. And I had a 23-inch neck, and I never got concussed. And all the other guys were getting concussed. So it's like, okay, that makes sense. Big, strong neck, you don't get concussed. So I dug into that to figure out, well, why? Why is this the shock absorber that protects this, right? And logically, it doesn't make much sense because, you're getting hit up here, you get hit up here. How does that work? Right. And that was the huge problem when my wife and I started our, United States travel tour with the Iron Neck for the very first time. Strength coaches would look at us like we were absolutely crazy. Right. What are you talking about? Helmets prevent concussions. Well, no, it's actually the neck strength. And that 3.5-year study that I mentioned proved that for every 1 pound of neck strength that you can add to your neck, you have a 5% less likely chance of being concussed. Wow. Now think about that. 1 pound of neck strength is not a lot of strength to add. Right. I mean, if you wanted to add a pound of strength to your bicep, maybe you work out for 2 days. Right. And hit some biceps really hard. You've added that pound of neck strength. And when you work with a high school kid or a college kid that's never done anything to strengthen their neck before, you can build neck strength really, really fast. And of course, we can't say we're concussion proofing anyone because, stuff happens. Right. But if you can put 20 pounds of neck strength on a kid's neck, I mean, you're getting to that point. So when Dr. Cantu told me that's when I said, okay, there's got to be a better way to strengthen the neck. Right. Because I'd been through it in wrestling, right? I mean, you've seen the crazy things that wrestlers do, and I did all those crazy things. My neck didn't feel great. Of course not. How could it? Bridging and arching and flipping around on your head all the time. Mm-hmm. So, and then if you go to the football side, they either don't do anything with the neck or they have a big 4-way neck machine, which doesn't do a lot of neck work because everyone's just moving their body like this.
Right. And you're seated too.
You're seated. I mean, it's just... It doesn't correlate well.
Right.
Or you're out on the football field during warm-ups talking to your buddy and pretending to work each other's necks out, pushing against their leg, pushing against their, and you're talking about what you guys were doing last night, and you weren't really working out hard. There's no consistency there.
Right.
So how do you solve all those problems? Four-way neck takes up a huge footprint in the gym.
Right.
Strength coaches hate things like that. They don't want a big footprint. They're not going to buy new equipment that takes up a big footprint. And how can it be worked into a program so a lot of people can do it at the same time, and maybe one strength coach working out? How are we going to hit those muscles in the best possible way?
Right.
So, you're a trainer. You know all about the human body, and you know all the diagonal direction fibers in the neck.
Right.
They're all set up there to rotate the head, tip it ipsilaterally, do all of this kind of stuff, not this and this.
Right.
Right? You're not getting a full contraction. If I do this, my sternocleidomastoid is only contracted halfway. Now, it's contracted the whole entire way. I'm getting a full contraction. Then when you throw in the fact that 95% of concussions happen from rotary acceleration, rotary, not you. When are you going to get a straight shot? Just perfect straight shot. It's never going to happen, especially in a football helmet. It's always going to be a glancing
Caught
blow.
off guard and you.
Yeah, exactly. You don't even know where the blow's coming from.
Right.
But it's 95% from rotary acceleration. So if we're going to invent something that's going to take all those factors into account, how do we what do we create? What do we invent? And I was playing on my wife's Pilates table and working with the bands, and I had the springs and the bands, and I started, doing this and rolling it around, and all of a sudden, wow, that feels kind of good. So that was the impetus behind rotation.
Right.
Let's figure out some way that we can put something together with consistency with rotation. So to get back to your original question, which I have not forgot.
Well, it gets one of the things that I've heard strength coaches, and I've seen it myself, is like your body is only as strong as it can decelerate from something. So like if you jump and you can't decelerate your knee, you're going to go falling on the ground after you land.
Yep.
Same thing with your neck. Yeah. Why should we have all these neck muscles? Well, it's so that when we get hit, our neck muscles can actually decelerate that
impact, that force.
Right. And so, but you make the point of like, if we're only moving in these like four cardinal directions, like forward, exactly straight on, and exactly to the side, and we don't have any dynamic strength. And so this is what you're probably trying to solve here, strapping on some springs and stuff like that and trying to figure out how that might work.
Yeah.
So continue. This is great.
Yeah. So that was the impetus.
Yeah.
My buddies, one guy, Mark Tuane, he played for the Dallas Cowboys. 3 Super Bowl rings, right? And he was at UCLA. He was in my recruiting class there. Yeah. And he's dead 6 months after he retired. He had CTE. He was a great family man, well loved in the community, but he couldn't stand. I assume he couldn't stand what was going on inside his brain, just like Junior Seau. Same thing. Junior Seau shot himself in the chest to kill himself, to protect this, so this could be autopsied, and so people could understand that I had CTE. Yeah. And the first bullet didn't work, and he picked the gun back up and shot himself again. That's courage. Yeah. That's unbelievable courage. But so, those are the things that you're looking at, and you're like, wow, we have to prevent this. We have to do something to prevent this. Yeah. So if we can prevent concussions, we prevent CTE, let's prevent concussions. Neck strength prevents concussions. Best way to strengthen the neck, in my opinion, is iron neck. I don't care how you strengthen the neck, Bart. I don't care how you do, just as long as you do. Right. If you have someone that's going to grab your head and hold it there and rotate it and force it around and you resist, that's a great workout. Then do it. Just do something about it. We were talking before the podcast, and I pointed out that girls soccer, most concussed sport now in America. Now, why is that? Anatomically, their necks are longer than a male neck, and they're thinner. But now they're doing all these sports. In soccer, you don't think necessarily as a contact sport. Mm-hmm. You're not headbutting each other and tackling each other, but there's a lot of contact in soccer. And if you're bumping up against somebody, shoulder to shoulder, running full speed down the field, your head is bouncing around and it's wobbling.
Right.
So if they fall on the ground, they can't keep their head from hitting the turf, this kind of thing. But let's talk about why this protects this. So in brain rattle is what I call it. The neurologists will call it coup, counter coup. But that's when the brain inside the skull starts bouncing and rattling around.
Right.
And bouncing off the inside of the skull. That causes a concussion. And we'll get back to a subconcussive blow in a minute because that is really important that we understand the difference between a subconcussive blow and a full-on concussion. Full-on concussion, everyone knows you were concussed. Right. You're pulled out of the game and you're set aside. Now we have all the protocols to get your brain back to a stable state before you're allowed to go back to play.
Right.
All right. And that's all great. My point is, let's don't get that far.
Right.
Let's build the neck strength up so you don't get concussed in the first place. So this is the shock absorber. So let's say, you're a running back and you break through the line of scrimmage. Linebacker comes from the side. You don't even really see him till the last second. He helmet to helmet contact here, hard. All of a sudden, your head is forced, and your neck, if it can, starts fighting against that force. It dissipates that force. Slows it down, and dissipates it into your body before your head and neck reach the end of its range of motion. Mm-hmm. If you can prevent the head and neck hitting that end of the range of motion and snapping, you prevent the brain from flying from one side to the other and then rattling. Right. So if I have a big, strong neck, I dissipate the force. Dissipate, and stop it before it snaps. I just prevented a concussion. So if you have a strong neck that can react to those external forces, you've really got half the battle beaten right there.
Yeah.
So the other thing is, Dr. Cantu again proved that in a 180-yard drive in the NFL, an offensive lineman can get up to 20 concussions and subconcussive blows.
Right.
20 subconcussive blows in 180-yard drive.
In one what?
180-yard drive. Think about that. 20. So what's a subconcussive
so in
blow?
Multiple downs, just contact after contact after contact.
Absolutely. If you don't have a big, strong neck, every single play an offensive lineman is using his helmet.
Right.
I mean, I was an O-lineman. This was my weapon.
Right.
This was a weapon.
Right.
And we used it all of the time, just beating people with it. And if you don't have a strong neck, it's those little subconcussive blows. They start adding up. And they add up, and now all of a sudden it counts as a full concussion. They keep adding up, and now it's another full concussion. Those are the ones that, they're the sneaky ones. They're a lot more nefarious than just a regular concussion because you're set down.
Right.
And you're protected. But even now, no one knows you're getting a subconcussive blow. You don't really even understand that you're getting it or you know it. But, if you're an offensive lineman, sure, you have felt that before. And you felt a little ringer. You might see little spots of light. But it's not going to stop you from playing. You didn't get concussed. It's like, whatever, shake it off and just keep going. So,
and I think too that sport, it's the mindset, the mentality of like, if one of my listeners has a kid who's in junior high or high school and they're playing football and they want to make the team, they want to show coach that they, they're not going to be like, Coach, I think I got slightly concussed. I better pull out,
that's
check
not going to happen.
No way. And that's it's noble on one sense, because you want to see your kid out there being tough and being strong and willing themselves to help the team win. But like you're saying here, unless the body is protected with a strong neck, that those things are going to add up time after time after time and create the type of situation in high school.
Yeah.
We know about the NFL, and there's so much so many stories and studies and that kind of stuff at NFL or even college football. I had an interview a couple years ago with a former Camp Gladiator trainer who played for the Cowboys, and he didn't play much, but he got to the Cowboys, earned a spot as a wide receiver for a couple of years, played with Emmitt Smith and all those guys. And he's 46 years old, and he is completely disabled. And he can't leave his house. He can't drive. He's just, and he's, he was able to have the interview, but I mean, the guy was a shell of himself, and it just from exactly what we're talking about here. But he was that guy. He was skinny. He was short. He kept saying, I should never have made the NFL. Like, I wasn't meant to, but I somehow did it. And he just wanted so badly to prove that he was worth being on, one of the greatest football franchises of all time, the Cowboys.
In their prime.
Yeah, in the late 90s and early 2000s, and he just willed himself to do it. And 20 years later, here he is, suffering from, all that kind of stuff. And he has a daughter and all those things that, are part of that, dealing with, the rest of his life. But it's very personal to me because I know Jeff very well and such an incredible human being before all this kind of started to truly, show up in his life. And so, but I think it's easy for people to see this as a professional football problem or an MMA, or you think maybe like, boxing, like, clearly like these guys are doing these massive combat sports. But going back to your point that like the most concussed high school students right now are women playing, girls playing soccer. And you could throw in field hockey and lacrosse or whatever other sport that they're
flag football now, varsity sport.
But you think about it like if I'm and it's not even like, it's just like, hey, what body parts do we need to be working in the gym if I'm a soccer player? Legs, right? Strong legs. They're doing squats. They're probably.
Yeah, but why? Why?
Because they think that's where their power comes from. That's where their agility. That's where their strength. That's where their kick, right?
And they want to protect the ankle and knee joint and hip joints.
Exactly.
They want to protect those
ACL.
joints.
They don't want.
Right?
They got to have strong.
It's
glutes.
preventative too. I mean,
exactly.
It's performance driven, but it is preventative.
They're not realizing that all the way up the chain, just as important is the neck and the whole
the whole core. I mean, this is an extension of the core.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love when people try it and they're like, "Oh my God, I feel my QL. I feel my my core stabilize." You're like, "Wow."
Yeah, it's a whole kinetic chain.
Right.
You're working it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and I think and as I get the chance to talk about iron neck, just in my own kind of daily promotions and things like that, I often get female clients or people that know me reach out and they're like, "Oh, that looks so barbaric," or "Oh, this," and I'm just like, "Oh, like." I mean, I get it. It's you put it on your head. It's a little funny, but like, man, it's just I feel like there's a whole demographic out there that if we can kind of let from whether it's high school girls or just women in general, that like, hey, this is so important.
It is.
For like you talk about recovery from an injury, whiplash, or car accident.
Tech neck.
I
mean, tech neck. Are you kidding? I mean,
Right.
You walk around. That's all you see is this now. That's all you see.
Right.
This head bent over. This increases the weight. Everything
long and weak.
Getting stretched out all of the time.
Short and tight.
Right. Yeah. No, it needs to be fixed, and the iron neck can do that. And it's funny you mentioned about the girls not wanting the iron neck on their head. What they don't like even more is a strength coach grabbing their head, or holding a plate on their head with a towel. Or anything like that, or putting their face in a four-way neck machine and pushing it to the side. They won't do that. They won't let someone grab their head.
Right.
So the iron neck, in my experience, is the only thing. Here's the skull cap. It's clean.
Right.
Put it on. Put the iron neck on. Okay. So they'll sort of go for it. And then if you can get them to do it a couple times, then they get it. They feel the difference, and they feel stronger. And you get a little more confident. I mean, an athlete that stands straight up with great posture, and because the neck is strong, and you have that confidence, and it radiates, and your opponent's like, "Holy shit, this guy's going to kick my ass." Right? Because, he looks like he's going to kick my ass.
Look at his neck.
Yeah, look at that giant neck. He's going to headbutt me. No. But, it's important that we tech neck.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so important. It needs to be worked out.
Well, I think, there's so many, from the advent of just social media marketing, I think there's a lot of companies out there trying to sell that their concept is valuable and that we need like these vibrating massagers. And there's a lot of like tech out there for fitness and recovery and all that. And we all should buy a $6,000, cold plunge. And I'm all for cold plunge, but I mean, it's like, but
just buy a deep freeze. Buy a deep freeze. It works.
You just get a deep freeze.
I got guys in San Clemente in my neighborhood. They buy a deep freeze.
Yeah.
And they do a couple little things to it. They fill with water, and it works just fine.
Yeah.
They don't electrocute themselves, thank goodness. We're not recommending getting a deep freeze for a cold plunge. I'm just saying, it's out there.
Right, but these are people that won't sleep 8 hours a night, but they think they're going to recover from sitting in cold water for 15 minutes or whatever. But my point of all that is really to say, like, what I love about Iron Neck, and obviously I work with you guys, so I'm a little biased, but I do feel like when you tell your story, it's like, God, how many more people need to hear about this, because you're truly the only one out there solving this problem, like solving the problem and trying to strengthen neck. I mean, I Googled like neck devices, and after Iron Neck, I mean, you see people hanging getting like a skull cap and hanging like a kettlebell from their head on an incline bench, and there's nothing out there that's really comparable to what y'all are doing. And so we're trying to solve a huge problem here. So it's awesome that you created this, and then B, that like the word is getting out, because you've been able to get into locker rooms at professional football. What other sports have you been able to kind of connect with on this?
So I started with pro football.
Right.
I figured they were the only ones that had enough money, right? So that was my target.
Sure.
But they're also, it's one owner that has a wallet. So sometimes it's hard to break that wallet open. So college football was like the big start, because colleges have the cash.
Yeah.
They have strength coaches that are well educated through the CSCCA or the NSC, say CSCS, and they understand what's going on. And that's where I started. But that start wasn't even easy. I mean, you would think, oh, college football, they'd understand this. Let's strengthen our neck. So my wife and I worked on this thing. We got it up and running, and we went to the very first show was the CSCCA. And that's a college strength coaches and conditioning association. And it's probably the best. I mean, it's like a master's degree in strength and conditioning.
Right.
So we went there, we were all excited. And we had our booth, and a little aisle, and people were walking down and they're looking at our booth. And I got this thing on my head, and I'm doing all this weird stuff, and they've never seen this before. They're like, what? And as soon as I got close enough to interact, they turned their head. They walk on by, and they'd be looking at the booths on the other side of the aisle. They didn't want to be associated with us in any way, because this was so far out of the norm that we were just nuts. And that, upset me. I was thinking, wow, geez, come on, guys. You should want to see if this actually works.
Yeah.
You should want to come over and try it out. So that first day was so disappointing. Well, that night, a couple of the strength coaches were having a conversation at dinner, and Doc Crease, who was the strength coach at Tennessee and Colorado and UCLA and a couple other schools, he was having that conversation. And Ethan was telling him, hey, Doc, there's this guy. He goes, let me go back. So Doc Crease was looking for a neck strengthening device. He just left UCLA, and he had a clinic in Marina Del Rey, and he wanted something to strengthen necks because he had some wrestlers that he was training. And he asked one of the other strength coaches, is there anything out there on the floor strengthens the neck? And jokingly, and I'm not going to mention his name.
Right.
He is a believer in Iron Neck now, though. But jokingly, this guy goes, yeah. Oh, there's that nut job out there. He's got this thing on his head, and it's just the craziest thing you ever saw. You should go check it out.
Yeah.
Well, Doc and I were friends. So when Carl Durrell was the head coach, I was helping coach the summer programs for high schools with the college coaches. So Doc and I would work out in the morning. But Doc and I had lost contact after Carl Durrell left, and I didn't know that he was the founder of the CSCA. If I'd have known that, I'd have been on the phone to him right away. I had no idea. So Doc's wandering around trying to find this crazy dude with this thing that's on his head, and I'm standing there, and behind me I hear, Jolly Man! Jolly Man! Jolly Man, what are you doing? And I turn around, it's Doc, right? And I'm like, Doc, big hug and all that. And he starts looking at my device. And of course he tries it out because Doc has a super open mind, and he wants to find out what this is about. Well, this is one of the original founders of the CSCCA So do you think that any strength coach walked by my booth without stopping and trying out the iron neck? Because he sat there all day and made sure they all did, right?
I love it.
So, I mean, that was just so serendipitous. But but yeah, I mean, that's how that all started. And then I was answering your question. Do you remember what the question was?
The question is really just like a tee to take you wherever you want to go. So don't feel like you. I mean, we were just talking about how, you know, like,
jeez, where was I going?
We started with
that?
football and how kind of how you brought iron neck into kind of the professional football space. And
I'm supposed to use my pad. I'm supposed to write those notes down so this doesn't happen. But
this is where you get to mention your your age.
I'm 64.
There you go.
You got to give me a little break.
One thing.
What time is it?
I've used I'm 49 a lot for those similar type things. So
One thing Mike hasn't really talked about too much, but in some ways, I don't know if you've had that much time to reflect on it because he's got a lot going on. But like, Mike really did come to market with a totally novel device to really do one thing, and that was to protect people. And it's funny because now the environment of where iron neck is in so many more places than probably you would have thought initially.
Yes, absolutely.
And,
now I remember your question.
And you know, maybe it's not in every gym yet, but it's in far more people's hands than gyms that are, you know, in the U.S.
And can I throw out, like, you're 6'4" too. So when you're 6'4", you're looking down at everybody, right?
A little bit.
I know, isn't it rough, guys?
My chiropractor is like, you know, do you have a desk job? And I'm like, no, I'm up on my feet all the time, but I'm always like this.
Looking down.
The world is happening below me, and so if we're not actively counteracting, you know, whether it's the cell phone or whatever, we're going to end up having a stiff neck. And I know what people do because, you know, unless somebody's injured and going to a PT and like getting, you know, accountability and consultation, the likelihood that they're going to just like spontaneously like use their iron neck or not, even if they don't have an iron neck, do some sort of like rehabilitation rehab to develop more range of motion in the neck is probably slim to none. What they're going to do is find a range of motion that doesn't create pain, take ibuprofen, and try to get on with life.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And their range of motion gets smaller and smaller, and their posture may be affected by those types of things. And then, you know, at 30, 40, maybe not a big deal. Maybe you have a little bit of pain. You use one pillow instead of two because your neck gets tweaked every time you go to sleep.
Yeah.
But when you're 60, 70, 80, that becomes your... Like
it gets magnified.
Right. And
each decade, it just gets magnified.
You see men and women. I see a lot of men, though. I don't know what it is, like with the kind of really hunched back, kind of their head is, like their entire head is out in front of their face and, you know, in front of their body. And it's almost too late at that point. Dentists?
That's how that's their posture.
Yeah.
They spend the whole day bent over, right? Looking into someone's mouth. So your question was...
Right. Well, I was just, you know, we were talking about...
Well, I remember.
Yeah, go for it.
You said, where do we start and where did it go from there?
Yeah.
So I said we started in football, right?
So I like this big moment where like the head, you know, the head of the organization came over and basically validated, like, quit calling this guy a freak show.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
on to something. You all need to come and take notice. And so continue from there.
So, but the other sports that we went into, and this, Sam, this is your point, because some of these other sports aren't contact sports, but they're sports that cause neck pain. One of the sports, and it is a sport, Air Force pilot. We were at the TSAC show, and I gave a presentation, and an Air Force pilot came over from Luke Air Force Base in Arizona and said, hey, we need these. My pilots, their necks are so jacked up. Now, they don't get concussions, but they pull 4 Gs at takeoff. Yeah. And when they're in a dogfight and up and around, they're pulling Gs in every possible direction you can imagine with their head and neck in every possible position you can imagine. I mean, their bodies are in a pressure suit. Mm-hmm. This can't be. Right. This has to be able to look out, you know, of the canopy and find enemy fighter craft. Right. So this is so jacked up. I have never worked with people with worse necks than fighter pilots. Wow. It was nuts. Formula One racing. Sure, there's crashes. Right. And if you have a strong neck, it's going to help, you know, prevent a concussion and protect your neck from getting broken and that kind of thing, obviously in a crash. but their necks are jacked up too. I mean, some of them are going the same way around the track all the time. One side of their necks just, and they've got to get that equaled out. So there's a lot of sports that don't have necessarily concussions, but have that neck pain.
Right.
And yeah, the iron neck slowly evolved into fixing people's neck pain. Here's a great story. You probably know Mike Clark, strength coach.
Yeah.
I met him when he was with the Chicago Bears.
Okay.
I spoke at the NFL Combine a couple times on neck strength and concussion prevention to the strength coaches. And after one of those talks, Mike Clark came up to me and he said, okay, and this is how he walked. He couldn't turn he just couldn't turn it. And he says, okay, Mike, I get it. Makes sense. It really makes sense. Let me put it on my head. Let me try this out. I'm not going to be able to do with the exercises, but I want to see what it feels like.
Right.
So I put it on his head. He gets it on there. And I said, okay, Mike, all I want you to do is just do a spin. He said, spin. I said, pirouette. Okay. Does a pirouette. And, his face is like, So do another one. Other way, two more. Yeah. I said, now just try to look left and look right. And he's like, and Bart, I'm not teasing. Literally within 2 minutes, his range of motion that he hadn't had for years was this much. So he's working out with a big smile on his face. I've got him doing a bunch of different exercises. He loved the Stevie Wonder, the figure eight. He loved that. And, I made a good sale of the Chicago Bears that day because he got it right away. He was like, wow.
Yeah.
So iron neck isn't all about strength, not at all. It's about flexibility. It's about range of motion. It's about breaking up fascia that's been just frozen and locked into place in your neck, elongating those muscles, stretching them out, getting blood flow to those ligaments and tendons.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 16 different pairs of neck muscles in the neck. Some of them are very, very tiny. But the only way to get it is to take the head and neck through those rotations, and really force that range of motion and the flexibility during those workouts. So that's why now, most of our sales, a great majority of our sales, are one-offs to people that have neck problems and they have neck pain. As we talked about earlier, I'm interested now, and we're trying to get back out there and say, hey, guys, playing sports, contact sports, this is important. This is why. The NFL's done a good job, and major college football's done a good job disseminating down, this is how you should tackle, you shouldn't use your head.
Right.
That's all great stuff. But pro soccer players aren't tackling anybody, and they're getting concussed a lot. So there's still more that we have to do, and one of those things is strengthen the neck. So while I'm overjoyed that we can fix people's necks and fix their neck pain and all of that and make their lives normal again, which is great, I still want to protect brains because that was a mission.
Still, yeah. I love that. And what I think is people, you look at the how much money is spent on kids sports in the United States per year, and it's like $4 or $5 billion for all the select sports and clubs and AAU and parents are willing to spend money on giving their kid the best opportunity. So if this story can, if the word can get out that hey, whether your kid is a basketball player, field hockey player, soccer player, whatever, we need to be thinking about that because my whole thing is I've been a trainer for 17 years. Core, the idea of core, because I grew up in the 80s, Arnold workouts. Nobody said core. That was not a word. You said abs, right?
Yeah, you said abs. Oh, yeah.
Right. Abs. So the idea of core has really come about 20 to 30 years of kind of that vernacular, that kind of just idea of hey, let's strengthen our core. Let's think about not just the six pack or not just the abdominals, but lateral movement or rotational movement. I feel eventually that we'll think about the neck in the same way. That eventually, it won't be a weird thing to see someone at Lifetime Fitness with the iron neck, warming their neck up because they're going to do plyometrics and squats in their workout, and they want to make sure that their core and their neck are Like I see a world that maybe, I don't know, maybe it's 5 or 10 years down the road.
I'm a member of
Hopefully not.
Lifetime, and guess what? The trainers at my Lifetime, they have iron necks.
There you go.
And they use them.
Yeah.
So it's not that far off.
Well, let's go talk to the South Austin Lifetime Fitness, because it's the third most busy Lifetime Fitness in the entire nation.
Really?
It is packed every single day, no matter what time of the day, which is a little frustrating if you want to get your workout done.
Get your workout
but my God, they're impacting lives over there.
Well, something you mentioned too, and I don't think that iron neck is in the same category as these saunas or the cold plunges that we see taking off, but there is something acceptable once you connect the dots between what weird thing someone is doing and what that means for their identity. So anyone that cold plunges is probably taking on a sense of, like, I care about recovering. This is why I'm doing this. I'm in a sauna, not because I like to sweat and I don't like the way it makes me look, but like it's healthy for me. I can detox, all those things.
Right.
I'm trying to upgrade my lifestyle.
Right.
Like I'm doing good things already, and I want to make sure that I'm doing more, and so I'm going to spend some money on
Yeah, and when the unfortunate reality is when people see someone using iron neck for the first time, the only thing they can think of is like you're strengthening your neck. What a weirdo. And it kind of like stops there.
Or
There's
like,
a
who
little bit
wants a big neck?
Right.
And this is going to be a challenge with the female demographic, is they're going to, it's like, oh, I don't do, like the whole, like, I don't want to build bulky muscles. Like,
Yeah,
there's gonna
but they
be
can't.
I know.
They can get stronger.
I know.
My
but
wife's
this-
a perfect example, right?
Right.
She has a little tiny neck. It's stronger than hell.
Yeah.
Because she uses iron neck probably just once a week.
Yeah.
Sometimes she uses it twice,
Yeah.
but she's been using it for a long time. But her neck is strong.
Yeah.
And you just got to convince them, guys, you're not going to build a big, bulky neck. You might put a half an inch of circumference on. You're never going to notice it.
Yeah.
But you will notice it out on the field when you're playing. Or if you have a jacked up neck, it's going to feel a lot better
Yeah.
by using it and working out. I mean, I'm all about, solving the problem, not just keep refixing, like going to a chiropractor and just getting adjusted.
Yeah.
Let's fix the problem. Let's strengthen that core. Let's strengthen the kinetic chain. Let's build the neck muscles up so they're nice and strong. So it doesn't matter if you sleep on a plane funny one time.
Well, and that's so interesting that you say that about iron neck, because you kind of get the best of both experiences from someone. No one's walking out of a PT feeling totally rejuvenated. Like that is a process.
Yeah.
But in the same way that you just shared about Mr. Clark, like you can have immediate relief in some areas.
Yes.
After 2-minute sessions. Now, maybe your pain doesn't go from like an 8 to a 2, like the testimonies we heard of in a week, but it certainly can get there after like 4 or 5 months, right? And so I think the iron neck does such a good job of being able to mitigate pain over time and have these big musculature improvements now that you're strengthening something that hasn't been. But because it's not something that is often strengthened, you can have these sort of immediate benefits that you feel after using it. A pump, some people call it, or it's just like I can totally, it's almost like a stretch in some ways too.
I love working out someone for the first time. And Bart, I know you've experienced this.
Yeah.
They've never had an iron neck on before. They have a little pain, they have a little problem, and they use it and they just go, wow, I've never felt my neck ever getting worked out. I mean, even with athletes who don't have pain, the first thing they say is, oh my gosh, I've never worked out my neck before, ever. This feels great. And, it's just so important to protect the neck. Here's a good story. And this is one that I don't share that often. But Joey Babson at Clemson University, I think he was the second college team to buy iron necks. And this is back when they were 13 pounds. But he bought into it, he got it, he understood it. They had 12 squat racks with iron necks hooked up to them. And they used the iron neck. They were faithful at using the iron neck. They went through a whole season at Clemson, won a national title. Not one person missed a game due to a concussion. During that same season, one player missed a game due to a broken neck. He was going across the end zone to catch a ball, wide receiver, and he smashed into the field goal post, full speed, broke his neck. Joey told me later, if he hadn't been using the iron neck, he'd be paralyzed or dead.
So
That's how
he was using the iron neck in his workouts all the way up until that moment.
To that moment.
So it wasn't a rehab thing.
It was all summer long. They were building. That season, they win the national title. No one misses a game due to a concussion. The entire season, this kid runs into the goalpost at full speed, breaks his neck, but is able to recover, come back, and play the next year.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and Joe said, "Hey, wasn't for iron neck,
Yeah.
it'd have been a lot worse." So,
Well, and just the idea that it wasn't as bad because his neck was so strong, and B, he used it then. It's like he really used it for both. He used it to strengthen his neck, and he used it to rehab his neck so that he could get back on the field and help his team.
right,
That's incredible.
right.
Yeah, I mean those are the stories that I think need to be heard about the iron neck, because otherwise I think people get a little too confused about like, why this? Do I need this? That kind of stuff. It sounds like you've had a couple of big like Mike Clark come in and kind of like saying, y'all need to think about this, or getting it with the Bears. Talk about the Joe Rogan moment where you go to Joe's gym before one of his podcasts. I think it was Tom Papa, because I was like, why is Tom Papa in this video? It didn't make any sense that Tom
funny.
would be there.
Well,
he's funny, but I'm like, why is Tom in the video?
Exactly, right.
So talk about that moment.
Yeah, so he was on the podcast that day.
That day, yeah.
And I was there before the podcast.
Okay.
So he showed up when I'm working Joe out.
Okay, yeah.
So that's a good story. So this ties back into Doc Crease.
Yeah.
So Doc Crease is working out Aaron Pico, who is a Bellator MMA guy, really good fighter right now. And Aaron won 4 state championships in California, wrestling championships. And he's just a great kid and an amazing wrestler. But Doc wanted to get that iron neck for him and the other athletes that he was training in Marina Del Rey. So I came down there and I met with Aaron and Doc and showed him how to use the iron neck. And I came back, 3-4 months later, walked in, and Aaron's a very strong guy, but he's not big. Mm-hmm. And, he's looking up at me, and I come in and I go, "Aaron, how's it going? How's your neck feeling?" He goes, he looks at me like, "I'm going to rip your head off," kind of a look. And he walks over and he goes, "Mike, my head is now a weapon." And I'm just like, yeah.
Nice.
Stay right where you are.
Down.
Yeah. But, he's a great MMA fighter. Yeah. So he's training with Nick Curson in Torrance. And Nick Curson's a MMA, strength and conditioning coach, trainer. Nick's on the Joe Rogan podcast. And Jamie, who we were talking about, he's on the computer. And so Joe's saying,
this is our Jamie.
This is our Jamie right here.
Sam, a.k.a. Jamie.
So Joe asked Nick about neck and neck pain and all that, and he goes, "Oh, we have this thing we use." He goes, "I don't know, it's like a halo thing." He doesn't even remember what the name of it is, and we put it on the head, and it makes your neck really, really strong. And it just, if you have a bad neck, it just fixes it. And Joe's like, "I want to know what it is. I want to know what it is." So Jamie's looking things up, and Halo. And when we originally invented the product, it was named Halo.
Really?
But there was a trademark infringement with some company in Canada that had something called a halo that had nothing to do with the neck. Anyway, They said, "We're going to sue you." And we said, "Yeah, we don't like halo anyway because it has some bad connotations." With the screw in the head and after you break your neck, they call that a halo. Yeah. So
like the girl on the bus and 16 candles.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that was a bad connotation, right? So
that's how old I am.
My wife came up with the term iron neck. Jenny goes, "Why don't we just call it iron neck?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's a great name. Let's do it." So we switched the name without any problem. Yeah. So he types in halo and it pops up.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Is this it?" And Nick Curson looks up and he goes, "Yeah, that's it. That's it." Yeah. So Rob Sherman, who's our CMO, he immediately starts DMing, Joe on Instagram. "Hey, the inventor and owner of the company, he lives right here in San Clemente, and he can come and see you, and he can give you a workout and give you an iron neck." And Joe got right back to us. I mean, it was pretty quick. Yeah. And so, there's always a tipping point in a company. And there can be more than one, but our first tipping point for sure was this experience. When I went to see Joe, Jamie filmed the workout. And it's about a 2.5 hour drive from the Valley, because he was in the Valley then, back to San Clemente. By the time, after I worked him out, and he loved the iron neck. I mean, he said things like, "Man, I'd marry this thing." I mean, he really got it. I mean,
you can tell. I mean, every time he brings it up.
Yeah, but some people get it.
Yeah,
some people just get it. And he just got it.
Yeah,
he just felt it. He just understood. It connected immediately with him.
Yeah.
He is built too.
Yeah, it's
He's like a little.
tank.
He is like a little fire hydrant, man. He is. Yeah. But anyway, by the time I got back to San Clemente, over 1 million combined views on Instagram and Facebook.
Wow.
Sold out of
So
Iron
Jamie
Necks.
had posted that video.
Right after I left, I guess.
Wow.
I mean, I got back and it was just like, guys were calling me, "I saw you on Facebook. You're with Joe Rogan. Oh my gosh." It's just like, it was crazy, but we sold out of Iron Necks right away. And, it sort of got us on the map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Yeah. You said Facegram. That
you
was
said
great.
Facegram.
That was
Facegram? Well, I'm
that was
64.
like- there you go.
Okay?
He's on
I'm
Facegram.
jet lagged.
this
I
guy.
flew into Austin today. Give me a break here.
I love it.
Facegram.
But I mean,
Did I
that's-
really say Facegram? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean that those moments are you can't plan those types of things, but when they happen, you've got to pivot. You've got to, and you've had many chapters of your life. High school wrestling and football. Talented enough to go to UCLA. Was it a football scholarship or was it kind
Football
of
scholarship, yeah.
Okay, but you wrestled until Title IX kicked out wrestling.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation right there. But but you're at UCLA, you're playing football, and you and your friends stumble upon a graduate one-act play that you decided. So because for those don't know or haven't Googled Mike Jolly yet, you may not realize that he has an IMDb account that's of all of his acting, from the 80s and 90s. That could be a whole nother podcast conversation. But tell me about going in there and auditioning for this, and kind of how that acting bug started for you. Back in it was about 1980 or 1981.
Yeah, it was probably 1981.
Okay.
I'd imagine. I think I was a junior.
Yeah.
So I was a poli-sci major.
Okay.
And poli-sci shares North Campus with theater arts.
Okay.
And I was walking back with a buddy from a poli-sci class, and there was a big sign, "One-act play auditions today." And it had the time, and it was in that time. And my buddy goes, "Let's just go try out." And, athletes, how athletes are. Okay. They're not scared of anything usually, right?
You're 6'4",
Yeah,
280, 290 at that time.
So let's go try out. So we went in there. It was a William Inge play, and I was auditioned for a part on Death Row. And it was a small part. I mean, it wasn't like, I was the star. No, I was like maybe 6 or 7 lines. Mm-hmm. But it was a really serious, you're gonna be killed tomorrow kind of a thing. And I got the part, and I loved it. And I was like, okay, I gotta start doing this. This is really fun. And I went into the theater department because, athletes have pre-enrollment. We have scholarships. We can take any class we want. Well, I walk into the theater department, and they go, "You can't take a theater class. You have to be recruited for this. This is a really, really, competitive program." And I went, "Really? Okay." So then I went to Chancellor Young, who was a big football fan, and I said, "Chuck, I'd like to take some theater classes. What do you think?" He says, "Go back tomorrow." So I go, and some people are going to hate this story because athletes and all the perks that they get.
So entitled.
Oh yeah, so entitled, right. So anyway, I go back the next day, and the first thing they said was, "Mike, what classes would you like to sign up for?" So basically, I got a minor in theater.
Yeah.
The only thing I would have had a major. The only thing I couldn't do was the major plays that you had to participate in, because it conflicted with football, of course, right? Mm-hmm. So I couldn't do that. But anyway, I got this minor, and then I lucked out and got a really good agent. Met this woman at a dinner party, and I told her what I was doing, and she was like, "Oh, I'm an agent." And she gave me her card, and Jenny Raymond, writers and artists. I had no idea writers and artists. I had no idea who she was. Everyone in LA is an actor or an agent, so you sort of take that with a grain of salt, right? But then I go back and I call a buddy who's actually acting and has a good agency, and he goes, "She's one of the best agents in town." And I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah. call her back. I said, okay, I'll call her back. So I was doing Desire Under the Elms at UCLA play, obviously. And there's one scene in Desire Under the Elms where I'm beating up my girlfriend. I mean, it's a really, really physical scene where I'm really just beating the shit out of her. And the cool thing when you're doing stage is you have to make it look real. You know, it's not movies where, you know, you just break the string and it looks like you punched somebody. None of that stuff. So anyway, I asked her to come in and do this one scene with me. It's about a 5-minute long scene. So we went into Writers and Artists a week later, and they have this big room, and they set chairs up in a circle. So they're in a circle, put us right in the middle. We do our scene, theater in the round completely. And it was super intense. I mean, she's sobbing and crying, and I really it's such an intense scene. And when it was over, all the chairs had been pushed to the walls.
Right.
I mean, they just.
Right. The intensity when it's real, like, that's such an interesting thing about live theater too. It's like when something's really visceral and like, you know, when it's authentically, you know, somebody's authentically going through a moment on stage, like, you know, it's uncomfortable.
It can,
like, it can be.
No,
it
certainly can be.
Because, you know, I mean, you think about like Stanley Kowalski in what's the
Streetcar Named Desire.
And one of the scenes is kind of like that a lot of young male actors will play is the one where, like, you know, he's at the dinner table and he kind of like he's just stewing and finally he erupts and like, you know, and Marlon Brando's great performance doing that and all that kind of stuff is kind of iconic, but it's this, you know, it's this ability in theater to kind of like unleash this part of you that in life that's not something you bring out, like, and
no, usually you temper that, right?
Temper that down, and I think it's such an interesting when you find, you know, like a love for something like acting, and you did a lot of movies and such, but I felt there's a connection with wanting to kind of like live full out in these moments, like,
and on stage. I mean, that's where you can do it, right? And I mean, you've done a lot of stage acting, so you understand that, and it can be different every night. That's what's crazy. I mean, based on the chemistry of the actors, I mean, it can be a totally different show one night to the next. Not worse or not better, but just different. Yeah. And it's
like
just
unravels differently.
It does. It's just it does. But so they signed me. Yeah. And I was like, awesome.
So you went in, did this amazing scene. They were like blown away, and okay, did the girl you brought in for the scene, did she get any love?
She didn't get any love. Okay. No, but she was a great actress.
That would have been a great story if she
she got signed too.
And she just got the shit beat out of her. I got the big job.
But the funny part is that the first movie part I got was in Creator. And it was a movie with Peter O'Toole as a star and Marilyn Hemingway and David Ogden Stiers. And it was based on chemistry students with their professors, and they were all working on their PhDs. Mm-hmm. But they had this flag football game that they'd always play against each other, these big rivals. So David Ogden Stiers was one professor, Peter O'Toole was the other. And they would take all their aggressions out on the football field, right, with the flag football. And so Ivan Passeur, Israeli director, was directing it, didn't know anything about football. So I came in from my audition, and, you know, it went well. I mean, I only had a couple lines. I mean,
you know, happy to be on the set.
Yeah, I was just happy to be there, right? And they hired me. So I walk onto the set, and it's at UC Irvine. Mm-hmm. That's where we were filming. And I walk onto the set, and David, the director, Ivan, comes up to me and goes, "Okay, Mike, I know nothing about American football. You direct these scenes." No, I'm serious. Bart, I'm serious. I've never been on a set in my entire life. And this is a major movie production, you know, millions and millions of dollars. You direct these scenes. And I went, okay, let's go. And, you know, I'd line people up, and I'd diagram plays, and we'd run plays, and they were working. Everything was going, you know, really well, and all of that. And it was a fun day. Of course, my genius call. I mean, this is in the script. Marilyn Hemingway had just gotten her boobs done, and so to distract David Ogden Stiers, she flipped up her top. So he sat there with his mouth wide open, looking at them. And then she zipped around him, and the ball was thrown to her, and touchdown, we won. But that's how that goes. But the worst part of the day, and sort of the best part of the day, was when Peter O'Toole wanted to learn how to throw the American football. So it's my first day on set.
Right.
Yeah,
And for the audience who may not know Peter O'Toole, British actor?
British, yeah. Great
famous
British actor. I think
but,
2 Academy Awards at least, right?
But probably not being cast in a lot of football movies.
No, never.
Dramatic actor.
Never, right? But he did play rugby in college.
Okay.
So, he had a rugby ball on set, and he wanted to learn how to throw the American football.
Yeah.
So I start, teaching him how to throw it and try to get him to throw a spiral. And, he's not really getting it that well. And then he starts getting a little better and a little better. And the first AD comes over and says, "Hey, we want to start, Mr. O'Toole."
Yeah.
And I immediately caught the ball and turned and started walking to go do our scene.
Yeah.
And Peter said, No. Let's keep playing. I'm getting this. I'm getting it. Yeah. We sat there, and I'm not joking, for 30 minutes while the entire cast and crew watched us play catch.
Can you imagine pulling that?
It was so uncomfortable. I mean,
I
he
think
was
Tom Cruise could do that.
Tom Cruise could do that.
There's a few actors that could pull that off nowadays, but
but he could back then, right?
Yeah.
And oh man, I was so nervous. I was going to get fired because it wasn't my fault, and they knew that, and everything went well. Yeah. Later, we filmed a scene up in Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz, and they flew all the lab assistants up for this final scene where the credits were rolling. Mm-hmm. And so it was a sunset scene, and the first day, he didn't want to do it.
This is Peter O'Toole?
Peter O'Toole. Didn't want to do the scene.
Okay.
So we were there another night.
Clouds weren't quite right.
Yeah, clouds weren't quite right. Let's go with that.
High tide was a little too much kelp.
Yeah, so the second day, the same thing happens. The third day, the same thing. The fourth day, the same thing. On the fifth day, we finally film it.
Yeah.
And after we were done, he goes, "Did you guys enjoy your week and all that extra pay?" He did that just so all of us, starting out actors could just get a little extra money for the week.
Wow.
I mean, just a cool guy. But that was my first part. But it's funny. It was football, and that's why I got it, because I played football. Probably not because I was a good actor at all.
But you get those experiences, and you get to really kind of sharpen your skills out there and see the greats. I mean, because you work with Whoopi Goldberg and some other people. You were in Sister Act, right?
I was in Sister Act too.
And was it Fatal Beauty?
Fatal Beauty, yeah. I did Fatal Beauty with her first and then Sister Act second.
Yeah. But I want to talk about and this is a total tangent. So if you're hoping to get some mindset nugget from this, I would say just go for it. He's a football player. He's poli-sci, and yet he finds this passion and he goes for it. And I think, we always want to dig into what made someone do this or that. And so much of it is just hey, I love something. I'm interested in something. Let's see what happens. And until it's no longer a good idea. But I want to talk about 3 O'clock High. Right? Because I'm 49 years old. I remember watching that movie. And it's. And if you haven't watched 3 O'clock High, you can rent it. It's on it's on all the platforms. You can go watch it. It's 90 minutes exactly. It is the best, the most fun roller coaster ride of high school. Maybe I would put maybe Breakfast Club slightly above it, but that's it's
Breakfast Club, great movie.
Yeah, but anyway, you were in that, and you didn't have the main role, but you were one of the the bully to fight the bully guys, and just had this really cool kind of. Talk about that, because I know you said that Steven Spielberg was the producer on that. And so talk about being on that movie and just kind of maybe something interesting from that time.
Well, that was a really fun shoot. The director was really a actor's director, and what I mean by that is he would really work with us. He cared about the actors and getting it all right so we could actually, do a really good job on the scene. Mm-hmm. It's funny because everyone in that movie that was playing high school, we were all between 24 and 27.
It's the same as Beverly Hills 90210. All those guys are 25 to 30.
And all of a sudden they were 40 years old doing movies, and you're like, What? He was just on Beverly Hills 90210, and now he's this old?
But it's funny, I was watching clips from the movie literally last night as we just kind of thinking about this interview, and I'm like, yeah, Richard Tyson looks about 27.
Yeah.
You know,
he does.
He could have played Jim Morrison. Right? Like, I mean, if Val Kilmer wasn't so damn good, they should have hired, Richard.
No, you're right.
But yeah, go ahead.
So he was the bully, right? Yeah. He's the bully.
But an interesting bully because he has a touch issue. Like, you're not allowed to touch him. He's real touch. But he has this code too, because he gives the money back at the end and honors the there's it's not a boring bad guy role. It's a cool,
it's more in depth for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So, but he's not very big.
Yeah,
right?
in real life.
In real life, he's not very big.
6'4",
so
he's not.
We did all of our scenes, and he's on a couple apple boxes. So he's up about this high in all the scenes we did.
Yeah.
So it would look like it was a fair fight at least, because otherwise it wouldn't be very believable.
They would start empathizing with this guy, like, oh man, we're picking on the big.
So I'm hired. By Mitchell to protect him at 3:00 when the bully Richard Tyson is going to go beat him up.
Yeah.
And he touched him. I think he touched him in the men's restroom because he was trying to get an interview because he's on the school paper. I mean, if you're going to touch a guy that doesn't like to be touched, you don't do it in the men's restroom.
Literally next to the urinal.
Yeah, it's like, oh wow, that's just not right at all. But he did. So anyway, he hires me, and there's this famous scene in the movie in the library. And so he hires me out on the football field during a fire drill because he wanted to find me. So he finds me in the fire drill, hires me. After the fire drill, I go in and I confront Richard Tyson.
And it's funny that Richard Tyson, this leather jacket,
He's in the library.
He's in the library reading a book. I tried to figure out what book he was reading. It would have been funny to know.
I can't remember.
J.D. Salinger or something like that. But anyway,
it probably was.
You come in.
So I come in and I say, hey, look. And, we played football against each other when he played football in the previous high school. And, we have this confrontation. And, of course, I finish it up with touching him by poking him in the chest. You will not mess with him. And he doesn't like that at all. So he grabs
the audience kind of knows in that moment, you messed up there, buddy.
Something bad is going to happen. The same thing in Fatal Beauty when I called Whoopi Goldberg a bitch. You knew I was going to get killed right away, right? So touch, grabs my finger, breaks it, and then punches me. And I fall into the bookcase, the first bookcase, and it knocks over as I go down. And it's just like dominoes all the way around the whole library. And then when the last one falls, you see, Mitchell standing there. He's been peeking through the bookshelves to see, the bad guy get beat up. And of course, that sets up the fight at the end of the show. But the funny part was this: they built those bookshelves specially so they would all tip over like dominoes. And then they loaded them up with books. The books were so heavy. The cable system that they installed to start the dominoes falling, the bookshelves falling, it would not work. They were yanking on it. They could not get the first bookshelf to move at all. Yeah. And so Phil Joanno's the director, and he's a young guy, and he's like a Steven Spielberg sort of protege, and great director. And I said, hey, Phil, I can probably knock that first bookshelf over if you want me to. He goes, how are you going to do that? I said, well, I'll start about 20 feet back there. I'll run as fast as I can. And then right before I get to the camera, I'll jump in the air and I'll flip 180 degrees. And I'll go flying into that bookshelf. And you just cut to that from the punch.
Right.
And he goes, you think you can do it? I go, yeah, I think I can do it. Well, it's a stunt. We're going to have to work out anyway, I got $500 extra to run into the bookshelf. I was like, okay, I've been doing that for free, so I'll run into a bookshelf for $500. But anyway, it worked. And, we knocked it over. And then, of course, the crew had to set it all back up because they needed a second take after lunch. And it's unbelievable because that's a mess. If you watch that scene, that was a mess.
It's a great scene.
They got that done in like an hour and 15 minutes. Yeah. Got that thing set back up, and then we went at it again. But so I hit that thing, and if you watch the clip, you'll see me driving my legs. So I got hit and punched out. But if you look at my feet,
it happens so quick in this, so it's really hard. You don't.
Yeah, but if you actually look for it, you go, oh yeah, he's I'm running as fast as I can backwards into that bookshelf.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was a fun shoot. It was a great movie. Some movie sets are just really fun to be on, just like some stage plays. You just have a good group, and you've experienced that where you just like to be around those people.
Yeah.
And other ones aren't the best.
Yeah. Sometimes they're more professional and just feel like people are like they're done when they're done and they go off. And but yeah, like I've done operas and musicals and stuff like that. And like
wait, you've done an opera?
Yeah, so I was in.
Seriously, I gotta hear. Sing something. I gotta hear your voice. You've done an opera?
So I mean,
wow.
So I was in Cal State Northridge. I was in the opera program because they didn't have a musical theater program, and I wanted to sing and act. And so I did the opera program, and I had to so we did Marriage of Figaro, La Boheme, Elixir of Love, and a bunch of like really cool operas. And so that was kind of the start of my acting, singing was actually in the world of opera. And
oh my gosh, that's cool. I can't sing a note. Yeah. My wife will be the first one to tell you that. So I'm jealous.
But okay, so we have totally tangented off, but I love this is the beautiful thing about life, 64 years, like you're not just a guy that created Iron Neck, you're a guy that's had many chapters of life. Do you have any grandkids?
5.
5 grandkids. How many kids?
4.
4 kids, 5 grandkids. You have a business building commercial hotels.
I'm in charge of all construction for a hospitality development company. Yeah. So we build hotels, and that's fun.
And and so the Iron Neck thing. When was the impetus to start Iron Neck? How long ago was that?
It was 2012.
Okay, so in the last 12 years or so has been this new chapter of kind of bringing this out and hitting the pavement in a sense, getting out to the shows and to the this is one of those things I think like you talked about. It's not that people don't know what you're doing. Like people don't know what it is. You had to like kind of just scratch and claw and get in front of them as enough people to. I mean, because it's nowadays it's like whether they understand it or not, like people know what the Iron Neck is.
If you work out, you've probably heard of the Iron Neck. Right. At this point.
And they've done a good job at making sure that the algorithm is working.
Are you kidding? These guys,
social media gurus.
These guys have done an amazing job. It's so funny. You know how many people tell me, I talked to you about Iron Neck, and all of a sudden Iron Neck's popping up on my Instagram and Facebook. I don't know how that happens, but I guess Siri's always listening.
But it's wonderful for the business, a little creepy for the people that are like, because I'll do that all the time. I'll mention something about anything, and it's like pops up. I'm like, oh yeah, there's an advertisement for that exact thing.
Right.
The new ones, we got a new puppy, and I mean the puppy ads,
you're
training and like the new food that you've got to feed your dog. I mean everything's online. It's just ridiculous. So, but man, I'm really honored to have this conversation with you. It's been a lot of fun. What's next for you? I know you're obviously getting out there promoting Iron Neck and doing the construction stuff, but is there anything in your personal life or something that you're really looking forward to?
Hanging out with my grandkids. Yeah. No, I've just got a couple more big hotels. I'm building a Waldorf Astoria in Lake Tahoe.
Wow. South or North Tahoe?
It is North Lake Tahoe.
Okay. So the California side.
No, it's the Nevada side.
Oh, Nevada side. Okay.
So it's right on state line.
Okay.
The old Biltmore. We bought that old Biltmore property, which is about 13 acres. Okay. We've leveled that, and we're going to build a Waldorf Astoria there. Okay. So that's kind of my last big construction job. I want to be sort of finished with that. That's kind of a good one to finish with.
Yeah.
And there's a couple more hotels between now and when that completes.
Right.
But I just
we have some siren song.
For construction. Yeah. Done. Put a bow on it, right? And
hard to build a double tree after the Waldorf Astoria.
I would never build a double tree.
I'm sorry.
I take that back, Hilton. I take that back. I'm just joking. Because Hilton does own Waldorf.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they do. Cool. So we got to be careful with that. But we have some stuff with Iron Neck. We have a new product that we've been working on, and hopefully sometime in the near future we can come out with that. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be widely accepted. It is covered by the same patents we already have with Iron Neck, which is kind of nice. We have 3 patents on Iron Neck. So that we're looking at that, and hopefully that'll come out here sooner or later.
Yeah. Well, man, all the best to you. Obviously, I'm here in Austin helping out wherever I can. But
we appreciate that, Bart. No, seriously,
it's so fun.
But you know what? When I'm sitting there in bed going to sleep, when I flip on Instagram, and there you are training someone on iron neck, and I'm like, man, Bart does a good job. It's just great to finally meet you in person.
Yeah, this has been something that I've been wanting to do. So really great to have you. Especially coming out here to Austin and. We like to think we're a big deal out here in Austin, Texas, but
I would love to build a hotel out here in Austin, Texas.
Let's make that happen.
We've looked at some spots in downtown LA. Downtown Austin, and they just haven't worked out. But it'd be a great place.
There's so many projects in downtown Austin that are going to be built, haven't been built, or like in the middle of being built.
Right.
Yeah, that's like it's crazy.
Well, with your celebrity connections, maybe
we
can leverage some of those celebrity connections and make something happen.
Whatever I can do to help.
All right. Hey,
thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Mindset Forge podcast. Check out other episodes on this YouTube channel and make sure you subscribe and like so I can get more of this content out to people like you. Have a great one.